I'm Brad Locke, Assistant Sports Editor with the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. Week 1 of high school football in the books, and one of the big games was Shannon's 36-35 win over West Point on Friday. Shannon, the #1 team in the Daily Journal large school rankings, and with us today is Shannon's coach, Chad Cook, in his first year. And Coach, I just want to ask you first about the win, your first win at Shannon, and quite an exciting one. Can you tell me kind of what was going through your mind and your heart after that one?
Well, I told the guys all week that it was going to be a war. When I told them a war, it's never won at the beginning, you win it at the end. You know, at the beginning you got to give blows, take blows, it's going to be back and forth, but in the end, that's when a war is won. And I didn't see it coming down the way it did, you know, us having to go for two. I thought we would win it in the fourth quarter, but not with 16 seconds left. And it's just a tribute to those the players and my coaches, because I've stayed on them since day one about finish everything you do. And it doesn't matter what happens, you get down or you get up, you got to finish at the end. And I knew when I stepped out on the field, I think it was a minute 45 left, our offense, mostly seniors, were just calm. They knew we was going to score. It's just a matter of, you know, to me, it was, they were thinking, how fast are we going to score? Coach Grubbs did an outstanding job calling the plays. Coach Merritt and Coach Keith were the receivers and the O-line, and it was just an unbelievable feeling, you know. And I felt for the Coach Chambers at West Point, because they was on the other end, and we were 8 seconds away from being on that end.
Yeah.
But I was glad for the guys to fight through adversity. When we was up 2 touchdowns, they tied back up. We go back up, they tied up, they take the lead, and we finished in the end. And I thought our defense played really good for 3 quarters. And then it looked like a different unit. You know, we couldn't stop them for anything. And then our offense struggled some in the first half, but got to go in the second half. And it was a great win.
Well, Coach, let me let people know a little something about you. A lot of people will recognize the name, especially if they're Ole Miss fans. Played for the Rebels. We were a linebacker. What years were you there?
96 to 2000.
96 to 2000. You got into coaching. One of your stops was Shannon, I believe, and was that 03?
Yeah, 03.
03, and then you went on to Yazoo County,
yes,
not Yazoo City.
Well, I started out when I graduated in spring '01, and I knew the whole time I was at Ole Miss that football was going to come to an end for me. You know, that I was going to have to, my playing time would eventually end, and I knew I had to be a coach just because I love being around the sport. That's all I've ever known since I was 5-year-old is football or baseball, some kind of sport. I took a job at Yazoo County as defense coordinator for '01 and '02. And I was wanting to, my wife was in nursing school at the time in Jackson, and I was wanting to get back closer to North Mississippi, and Coach Casey had an opening as defense coordinator, so I came back in '03. Great experience. I knew then, I said, well, this is the place I want to be.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the year, Yazoo County's head coach left, and I was debating. I knew I wanted to be a head coach one day, and I was like, they've never really had any tradition. You know, I'd go down there, you know, to me it was a win-win situation. You know, they'd never been really good in football.
And you turned them around, had them in the playoffs.
So I took it, and first year was tough. Well, I knew going in we wouldn't win that first year. I was having to teach them how to play, how to be teammates, and how to be together. And the second year we went 5-5, made the playoffs, first time ever. And then the last year we went 10-2, won a playoff game. They'd never won a playoff game, never hosted a game, won more games than they've ever won. And then Coach Casey decided to become principal, and the door opened here, and I knew, this is the place I wanted to be.
Good, Coach. And I want to talk now, going back to that game. The big stats that stood out were your passing numbers. Michael Ledbetter threw for over 330 yards. William Green had over 200 yards receiving. Kind of talk about that connection these guys have.
Well, that's one thing about our offense, is we've got to be able to throw the ball. When everybody knows we're throwing the ball, when I say throw the ball, is be able to read progressions. A lot of people are, they go into the game, a lot of teams, we're going to take away this. Well, we have to recognize early what they're giving us. Our offense is so balanced in, we've got so many different routes, because those kids have been doing that since 7th grade. Every route they run, it's second nature to them. And I knew Michael, if our O-line could protect him, and they did an outstanding job, Coach Keith had those guys ready to play, that he could, make his reads from the first, second to third guy. And Michael was on. I think he completed 84%. You don't hear that a lot in high school.
No.
But that's a tribute to the way those guys, get after in practice, how they read each other really good. And I didn't know if it'd be Arcedo or it'd be William, but I knew one of them would have a big game.
Yeah, well, you got guys like Arcedo Clark, like you said, William Green. Uh, who else you got there in your receiving core?
Jarvis Bogan till he got hurt, and the other two were Alex Thornton and Jarius Hampton. And I've tried to, and Coach Grubbs has also to tell Arcedo and William that the best thing can happen for each one of them is the other one being on the field, because teams are going to decide, which one they want to try to take away, but the other one has to be ready to have a good game. Yeah. And it happened to be William of the night because they were double teaming Arcedo on the 2-point conversion. It was a play we run in practice all the time. When Arcedo runs a slant, 4 of them chase him.
Yeah.
Nobody chases William Green, because they were thinking we was going to throw the slant to Arcedo. William was wide open. Michael made the throw, and William made the catch. And Ledbetter to me is one of the better quarterbacks in the state throwing the ball. He knows that, but he knows it comes responsibility. We need that day in and day out. Yeah. And William Green is he's a competitor.
Yeah.
I know when he's on the field, he's gonna give it everything you got. And once we get everybody doing that every play, we got a chance to have a successful season. Real
quickly, we got Lafayette coming up this weekend on the road, the first of 3 straight road games for Shannon. Just real quick, your impressions on Lafayette.
Great team. When I see Lafayette County, I see a team. They distribute the ball around pretty good on offense. They're either in 2 tights, I-backs, great quarterback, good fullback, pretty good tailback. Offensive line, stays with the blocks, the whistle blows. And if that's not working, they spread you out. And they've got, a 2-sided monster, what I call. Mm-hmm. They're going to smash mouth you, then they're going to spread you out. Defensively, they're going to be where they're supposed to be. Yeah. They remind me a lot of Olive Branch. You're not going to make big plays because they messed up. You're going to have to earn everything you get. And I'm excited to see how we play Friday night. Yeah. What the kids' mindsets are. Because if we don't have the same mindset as we did against West Point, it could be a long night.
All right, well, Shannon at Lafayette, that is our game of the week. You can find a preview of that game in Friday's Daily Journal, along with a lot of other good high school information and stories. Coach Cook, appreciate you taking a minute with us. And be sure to join us again this weekend after all the Week 2 action for Northeast Mississippi Rewind.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.